the late arrival. Commander Vex'thul slammed his clawed fist against the holographic display, sending ripples of distortion across the battle simulation interface. The Apex war games had been running for 6 standard cycles now, and his forces had dominated every single engagement. His crimson eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he watched lesser species flee before his mighty Korthak armies. "Sir," his lieutenant, Zrak, approached with obvious hesitation. "There appears to be one final participant joining the simulation." Vex'thul's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Another fool seeking glory? What species dares challenge the might of the Korthak Empire this late in the games? According to the registry, sir, it's a human." The command bridge fell silent. Every alien officer turned to stare at their commander, waiting for his reaction. Vex'thul's laughter started as a low rumble, then exploded into a thunderous roar that echoed to the metallic corridors of his flagship. "A human?" he wheezed between fits of laughter. "Oh, this is rich. Those pathetic, soft-skinned mammals think they can compete in the Apex war games? I've heard tales of their so-called military prowess, but surely this is some kind of joke." On the other side of the galaxy, Maya Chen adjusted her headset and cracked her knuckles. The 22-year-old engineering student from Earth had been trying to log into the simulation for the past week, but technical difficulties kept blocking her access. Now, finally connected, she found herself staring at a vast digital battlefield where massive alien fleets were locked in combat. "Well, better late than never," she muttered, scanning the tactical display. Her brown eyes widened as she took in the scope of the conflict. Dozens of different alien species had already been eliminated, their virtual fleets reduced to cosmic debris. Only 7 major powers remained, and judging by the scoreboard, someone called Vex'thul was absolutely dominating. "Let's see what all the fuss is about," Maya said, selecting her starting position on the outer rim of the simulated galaxy. The interface allocated her a modest fleet, 50 ships, basic weaponry, and limited resources. Compared to Vex'thul's massive armada of over 3,000 vessels, it looked pathetic. Back on his flagship, Vex'thul was still chuckling as he reviewed the human's deployment. "Look at this, Zrak. The little human has chosen the most resource-poor sector of the simulation. 50 ships? My advanced scouts number more than that. Should we pay her any attention, sir?" "Her." Vex'thul's eyes glowed brighter. "Even better. A female human thinking she can match wits with the greatest military mind in the galaxy. I almost feel sorry for the creature. Almost." He leaned back in his command throne, a masterpiece of Korthak engineering that towered above his subordinates. "No, let her play with her toys for a while. When she inevitably comes begging for mercy, I'll show the galaxy exactly what happens to species that overestimate themselves." Maya, meanwhile, was busy analyzing the simulation's physics engine. Her background in quantum mechanics and systems engineering proved invaluable as she identified several interesting properties of the virtual universe. The game operated on advanced algorithms that mimicked real stellar physics, including gravity wells, energy distribution, and momentum conservation. That's interesting," she murmured, noting how the larger fleets were struggling with coordination delays due to the simulated speed of light limitations. The bigger you are, the slower you react. Classic bureaucracy problem, even in space. Her first few moves were cautious. She sent scout ships to survey nearby systems, establish resource collection operations, and began upgrading her fleet's technology. Other participants barely noticed a human presence in the simulation, too focused on avoiding Vex'thul's relentless expansion campaigns. The Korthak commander had earned his fearsome reputation through brutal efficiency. His standard tactic involved surrounding enemy fleets with overwhelming numbers, then systematically destroying them ship by ship while broadcasting their death screams across all frequencies. It was psychological warfare at its finest, and had broken the will of countless opponents. "Sir," Zrak reported during their daily briefing, "the human has been quietly expanding. She now controls 17 systems and has upgraded her fleet to approximately 200 ships." Vex'thul waved dismissively. 200 ships against my 4,000? The mathematics speak for themselves, Zrak. When I'm finished crushing the remaining major powers, I'll deal with the human as an amusing afterthought. But Maya wasn't just expanding randomly. She had identified a critical flaw in how the other participants were playing. They were all thinking in terms of traditional space warfare, big fleets, heavy weapons, direct confrontation. Meanwhile, the simulation's physics engine offered far more creative possibilities. She had discovered that the game's gravity mechanics were incredibly sophisticated. Stars, planets, and even large fleets generated gravitational fields that affected everything around them. Most players treated this as an obstacle to navigation, but Maya saw it as an opportunity. "Let's test a theory," she said, directing a small squadron toward a binary star system. The twin suns orbited each other in a complex dance, creating gravitational anomalies that most players avoided entirely. Maya's ships approached the system carefully, using precise calculations to slingshot around the gravitational fields. With each pass, they gained tremendous velocity while consuming minimal fuel. It was basic orbital mechanics, but applied in ways the simulation's designers probably never intended. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Vex'thul was putting the finishing touches on his conquest of the Zelkari Federation. The proud reptilian species had fielded an impressive fleet of 1,200 ships, but numbers meant nothing against Korthak tactical superiority. Zelkari scum, Vex'thul broadcast as his forces surrounded the enemy formation. "You fought bravely, but bravery means nothing without strength. Watch as I demonstrate the price of defying the Korthak Empire." The battle was methodical and brutal. Vex'thul's ships focused fire on individual Zelkari vessels, overwhelming their shields and reducing them to radioactive clouds. The psychological impact was devastating. Within 2 hours, the remaining Zelkari forces were in full retreat, abandoning their home systems to the Korthak advance. "Excellent work," Vex'thul purred, watching the Zelkari commander's flagship explode in a brilliant flash. "That leaves only 3 major powers. The crystalline HFY, the energy beings called the Flux Collective, and..." He paused for dramatic effect. "One very lost human girl." His bridge crew erupted in appreciative laughter. The idea that a single human could pose any threat to their mighty empire was absolutely ridiculous. But Maya was far from lost. She had spent the last several game cycles studying every major engagement, analyzing fleet movements, and mapping resource flows. More importantly, she had been experimenting with the simulation's physics in ways that bordered on exploitation. Her breakthrough came when she realized that the game's artificial intelligence couldn't predict truly irrational behavior. Every alien commander, including Vex'thul, followed logical military doctrines. They protected valuable assets, maintained supply lines, and avoided unnecessary risks. It was sound strategy, but it was also predictable. "Time to see if crazy beats smart," Maya grinned, finalizing her preparations. She had been quietly building a special fleet over the past several cycles. Instead of traditional warships, her vessels were stripped-down hulks packed with experimental drives and navigation systems. They looked worthless to outside observers, which was exactly what she wanted. The key to her plan lay in the binary star system she had been studying. The gravitational interactions between the twin suns created a phenomenon called a gravity slingshot cascade. By approaching at precisely the right angle and velocity, a ship could theoretically achieve tremendous speeds. The catch was that the calculations required split-second timing and perfect coordination. One mistake would result in the ship being torn apart by tidal forces or flung into interstellar space. Most rational commanders would never attempt such a maneuver. The risk was simply too great, and the potential benefits seemed marginal at best. But Maya wasn't most commanders, and she definitely wasn't rational by alien standards. "Human unpredictability for the win," she said, beginning the most dangerous phase of her plan. Her modified fleet approached the binary system in perfect formation. The ship's experimental drives hummed with barely contained energy as they prepared for the Cascade maneuver. Maya's fingers flew across her control interface, making micro-adjustments to account for gravitational variations and stellar wind. Meanwhile, Vex'thul was celebrating another victory. The crystalline HFY had proven more challenging than expected, their geometric ships capable of remarkable tactical flexibility. But superior numbers had eventually won the day, and their homeworld now belonged to the Korthak Empire. 2 down, 1 to go, he announced to his cheering crew. The Flux Collective still controls a significant portion of the galactic core, but their energy-based technology is no match for solid Korthak engineering. Victory is within our grasp. He was so focused on his impending triumph that he completely missed the gravitational anomaly readings from the outer rim. His sensors detected unusual energy signatures near the binary star system, but his tactical AI dismissed them as natural phenomena. After all, what military commander would voluntarily fly into such a dangerous area? Maya would, and she was about to prove that human insanity could be the ultimate weapon. Her ships hit the Cascade point with perfect precision. The combined gravitational fields of the binary stars grabbed her fleet and accelerated it far beyond normal engine capabilities. G-forces that would have liquefied organic crews were absorbed by her automated systems. The modified vessel screamed through space at velocities that defied conventional physics. "Holy acceleration, Batman," Maya whispered, watching her speed readings climb to impossible levels. "I really hope this works." The Cascade maneuver had given her fleet tremendous kinetic energy, but that was only the first part of her plan. The real genius lay in what she intended to do with all that momentum. Vex'thul's massive armada was concentrated around Galactic core, preparing for the final assault on the Flux Collective. For 1,000 ships arranged in perfect formation, following established tactical doctrine. It was an impressive sight, and it represented the pinnacle of Korthak military might. It was also about to become the galaxy's most expensive target. The crushing blow. Maya's fleet was now traveling at 17% light speed, a velocity that should have been impossible for ships of their size. The gravitational cascade had worked perfectly, transforming her modest vessels into relativistic projectiles. But speed alone wouldn't win this battle. She needed precision, timing, and a healthy dose of good old-fashioned human stubbornness. "All right, big guy," she said, studying Vex'thul formation on her tactical display. "Let's see how you handle a little game theory." The Korthak commander was completely unaware of the approaching threat. His attention was focused on coordinating the final assault against the Flux Collective, whose energy-based ships were putting up surprisingly fierce resistance. Beams of pure plasma exchanged with crystalline force barriers, creating a light show that would have been beautiful if it weren't so deadly. "Admiral," Lieutenant Zrak called from the station, "I'm detecting some unusual readings from the outer rim sensors." Vex'thul barely glanced up from his tactical displays. "Cosmic radiation, solar flares, who cares? We're in the middle of securing our final victory, Zrak. Unless the stars themselves are declaring war on us, it can wait." How prophetic those words would prove to be. Maya's modified ships were now entering the outer edge of the galactic core region. At their current velocity, they had become essentially undetectable to conventional sensors. The relativistic effects were causing massive sensor interference, making her fleet appear as nothing more than background cosmic noise. "Phase 1 complete," she announced to her empty command center. Time for the fun part. Her plan was elegantly simple, which made it absolutely terrifying. Instead of engaging Vex'thul's fleet directly, she was going to use the simulation's own physics against him. The Korthak armada was concentrated around a supermassive black hole at the Galactic Center, using its gravity well for tactical advantage. What Vex'thul didn't realize was that Maya intended to turn that same gravity well into a weapon. She had calculated that a high-velocity impact on a specific neutron star in a region would create a cascade effect. The neutron star's incredibly dense matter would be destabilized, causing it to collapse into a nearby black hole. The resulting gravitational waves would disrupt space-time itself, creating what physicists call a reality storm. Most rational beings would consider such a plan completely insane. The energy requirements were enormous. The margin for error was essentially zero, and the potential consequences could affect the entire simulated galaxy. But Maya wasn't most rational beings. She was a human, and humans had a long history of solving impossible problems through spectacular acts of calculated stupidity. "Warning. Approaching gravitational anomaly," her ship's computer announced. "Recommend immediate course correction." "Computer, you have no idea what we're about to do," Maya replied cheerfully. "Override safety protocols and maintain current heading." Meanwhile, Vex'thul was savoring his approaching victory. The Flux Collective's energy shields were finally beginning to fail under the relentless Korthak bombardment. Their ships, beautiful constructs of pure organized energy, were dissipating one by one as his plasma cannons overwhelmed their coherence fields. "Magnificent," he purred, watching an enemy destroyer dissolve into component particles. "Signal the fleet. Prepare for final assault. I want every last trace of flux technology captured or destroyed." His bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, coordinating the movements of 4,000 warships. It was a logistical masterpiece, the kind of operation that had made the Korthak Empire the terror of 17 sectors. Victory was so close he could taste it. That's when Maya's fleet hit the Neutron star. The impact was cataclysmic. 50 ships, each traveling at 17% of light speed, struck the ultra-dense stellar remnant with combined kinetic energy of a small supernova. The neutron star structure, stable for millions of years, was instantly overwhelmed. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself began to scream. The neutron star collapsed into a nearby black hole, adding its mass to the already overwhelming gravitational field. The sudden increase in gravitational density created ripples in space-time that propagated outward at the speed of light. Stars began to flicker as their fusion processes were disrupted. Planets shifted in their orbits, and Vex'thul's carefully organized fleet formation was about to be turned inside out. "What in the name of the void is happening?" Vex'thul roared as his flagship began to shake. Warning klaxons blared throughout the command bridge as gravitational sensors went completely haywire. "Sir, massive gravitational anomaly detected." Zrak shouted over the chaos. "Something has destabilized the local space-time matrix. Gravitational waves incoming in 30 seconds. Vex'thul's blood ran cold. Gravitational waves were a theoretical weapon, something discussed in advanced physics textbooks but never actually deployed. The energy requirements were beyond the capabilities of any known civilization. No one would be insane enough to attempt such a thing. "Impossible," he breathed. "No one could have the technology to generate artificial gravitational waves. The power requirement alone would require the destruction of an entire star system." His words were interrupted by the arrival of the reality storm. The gravitational waves hit Vex'thul's fleet like an invisible tsunami. Ships that had been in perfect formation suddenly found themselves scattered across thousands of cubic kilometers as space itself stretched and compressed around them. The larger vessels, proud symbols of Korthak engineering, were torn apart by tidal forces that exceeded their structural limits. Evasive maneuvers. Vex'thul screamed, but it was too late. You can't evade a phenomenon that affects the very fabric of reality. His flagship, the mighty dreadnought Bloodclaw, groaned under stresses it was never designed to handle. Emergency lights flickered as gravity generators failed throughout the ship. In the lower decks, Korthak warriors found themselves floating helplessly as artificial gravity fluctuated between crushing weight and zero-G weightlessness. "Engineering report," Vex'thul demanded, clinging to the command throne as another gravitational wave passed through the ship. "Primary power failing, sir," came the panicked response. "Hull integrity compromised on decks 7 through 12. We're losing life support on multiple levels." Across the fleet, the destruction was absolute. Smaller vessels were being compressed into metallic spheres by gravitational lensing effects. Others were stretched like taffy as space-time distortions pulled them in multiple directions simultaneously. The proud Korthak armada, terror of the galaxy, was being reduced to cosmic debris by forces beyond their comprehension. Maya watched the chaos unfold on her long-range sensors with a mixture of satisfaction and horror. The plan had worked better than she had expected. Maybe too well. "Holy physics, Batman," she whispered. "I really hope I didn't just break the entire simulation." The gravitational waves were still propagating outward, affecting systems hundreds of light years away. Stars were being nudged out of their normal positions. Planets were experiencing tidal effects that would reshape their surfaces. The entire galactic core region had become a cosmic disaster zone. But the most dramatic effect was on Vex'thul's fleet. Of the 4,000 ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 100 remained functional. The rest had been destroyed, disabled, or scattered so far that they would take decades to return to formation. The mighty Korthak Empire, masters of conventional warfare, had been utterly crushed by a force they couldn't even comprehend. Vex'thul himself was barely alive. His flagship had survived, barely, but most of its systems were offline. Emergency power kept the bridge functional, but the ship was essentially dead in space. Around him, his surviving officers struggled to make sense of what had happened. "Status report," he croaked, his voice weak with shock. "Fleet is gone, sir," Zrak reported, his own voice hollow with disbelief. "Total casualties estimated at 97%. Remaining ships scattered across the sector. No functional command structure remaining." Vex'thul closed his eyes, trying to process the magnitude of his defeat. His empire was finished. His reputation was in ruins. Everything he had built, everything he had conquered, was meaningless now. "Sir," Zrak continued hesitantly, "we're receiving transmission. It's from a human." The words hit Vex'thul like a physical blow. The human, in all the chaos, he had completely forgotten about the insignificant Earth girl with her 50 ships. How was she still alive? How was she even relevant to this catastrophe? "Put her through," he said quietly. Maya's face appeared on the main screen, looking surprisingly calm for someone who had just reshaped local space-time. She was young, Vex'thul realized, probably not even 30 years old by human standards. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore what appeared to be casual civilian clothing. This was the being who had destroyed his empire? "Hi there," Maya said cheerfully. "I'm Maya Chen from Earth. I believe you're Commander Vex'thul. I have to say, your reputation for military strategy is quite impressive." Was impressive? You know what I mean. Vex'thul's mandibles twitched with barely controlled rage. "How? How did you do this? What weapon did you use? What technology could possibly generate artificial gravitational waves?" Maya smiled, and there was something terrifying about the expression. Not cruel or malicious, just amused, like she was explaining a simple concept to a child. "Oh, that wasn't a weapon, Commander. That was just applied physics. I destabilized a neutron star using kinetic impact and let natural forces do the rest. The gravitational waves were just a side effect. Basic stellar engineering, really." "Basic?" Vex'thul's voice rose to a roar. "You destroyed an entire stellar system. You violated the fundamental laws of warfare. This was genocide on a cosmic scale." "Actually," Maya replied, her tone still infuriatingly casual, "this is a simulation, remember? No actual star systems were harmed in the making of this victory. Though I do appreciate your concern for cosmic conservation. Very environmentally minded of you. The reminder that this was all virtual reality somehow made it worse." Vex'thul had been defeated not in glorious battle, but in what was essentially an elaborate video game. His legendary tactical skills had been rendered irrelevant by a human college student who treated the laws of physics like a playground. "Besides," Maya continued, "you were the one who said strength was all that mattered. I'm just demonstrating that there are different kinds of strength. Sometimes the biggest advantage isn't having the most ships or the best weapons. Sometimes it's being willing to think outside the box, or outside the galaxy in this case." Vex'thul realized with growing horror that she was right. His entire military philosophy was based on overwhelming force and conventional tactics. He had never considered that someone might weaponize the universe itself. The idea was so insane, so utterly irrational, that it had never occurred to him to defend against it. "You humans," he said slowly, "you're all completely insane." "Thank you," Maya replied brightly. "I'll take that as a compliment. By the way, you might want to check the simulation status. I believe I just won." Indeed, the Apex War Games had officially concluded. With Vex'thul's fleet destroyed and the other major powers eliminated, Maya Chen from Earth was declared the victor by default. Her final score, one human girl with 50 ships versus the greatest military minds in the galaxy. The simulation began to shut down, virtual reality dissolving into streams of data. As his consciousness was uploaded back to his physical body, Vex'thul found himself face-to-face with an uncomfortable truth. The Korthak Empire's military doctrine, the foundation of the galactic dominance, was completely obsolete. Somewhere in the void between virtual and reality, He could hear Maya's laughter echoing through the digital cosmos. It wasn't cruel or mocking. It was the laughter of someone who had just pulled off the greatest practical joke in galactic history. And as the last traces of simulation faded away, Vex'thul made a mental note to never, ever underestimate human creativity again. The universe was a much stranger place than he had ever imagined, and humans, apparently, were the strangest part of all.